It's basic literacy and thought. Forming thoughts. Can we try that? Let's try forming thoughts. The fingers and mouths got old pretty quickly. Plus putting other shit in their mouths and putting their fingers in other shit. What is the point of existing? What is the point of like literally being alive if not to talk about art with people?
I don't think I've ever drunk champagne before breakfast before.
Now I've got a wonderful idea.
Hello, welcome back to the Movies for Breakfast podcast. Today we're talking about Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights. Where to begin? A couple of days ago, I posted a video on the Wuthering Heights book by Emily Brontë where I recap the whole plot, the characters, I explain some of the historical context and what Emily Brontë's intent was. So if you have seen the movie and now you're wondering like, why are all the book people mad? What was the deal with the book? I highly recommend my own video. I have to say, it's a great video. I really like it. I worked hard on it. Go check it out. But today, I want to talk about the movie as much as possible on its own, apart from the book. I have talked a lot on my TikTok, on Instagram, and in that last episode about Emerald Fennell and about my serious issues with her adaptation choices and how I think she is racist in the way that she adapted the book. I'm not going to mince words. I think that's the core of it, and I think that's what it is. I've been really unpleasantly surprised and disappointed to see how many people are vehemently defending her and defending this movie, whether or not they've even seen it. I find that really disappointing. I shouldn't be surprised, but I guess I am, because I feel like a lot of it is coming from reasonable people. Some of it is even coming from fans of the book who say that they loved the movie, and I don't know. To that I say, if you are a white woman who loved Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, I'm not saying that's like wrong and you're not allowed to like a movie, but I do think you should maybe do your own research and thinking. Have some deep critical thoughts about it before you continue to promote it widely on social media and post yourself crying about how amazing it was. And before you dismiss all of the criticisms that you hear. I think my audience, if you listen to and watch my podcast, you are more likely to kind of like see my side of things, because I talk about politics and race and gender in every damn episode. Art is political. I'll die saying it. I don't have a whole lot more to discuss in terms of Heathcliff's casting. I said my piece on it, but I do want to talk about Isabella and Edgar's casting. I want to talk about what changes were made to the characters and to the essence and spirit of the story. And apart from that, I want to talk about the movie as a movie. And I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be fair. There are things I really liked about this movie. I did think it was visually stunning quite often. I thought the costume design was interesting. Maybe I didn't always love it, but it was thoughtful and interesting. I thought the architecture was beautiful. Set design, production design, beautiful. I'm sure there's one or two other things I can say that I liked. Hair. I liked the hair. I didn't like the makeup. Anyway, I'm gonna assess it fairly and give you what I always give you, which is credit where credit is due and criticism where criticism is due. Oh, that's good. I feel like that should be my slogan. Credit where credit is due, criticism where criticism is due. It's a little wordy though. Anyway, grab a drink, grab a snack, sit down, hang out with me. Let's talk about it. I'll go spoiler free for the first few minutes and give a spoiler warning before I go into the plot synopsis and give spoilers. What I will tell you is, based on the previews, based on the press tour, and based on all of the discourse online, I was under the impression that this was going to be a highly romantic, erotic movie that focused on and explored like the sensuality between Catherine and Heathcliff. I fear that was not it. So it was kind of a weird dynamic after the movie in the theater. I interviewed a couple of people and I talked to people. I was with my sister who had not read the book, and it seems like everyone was disappointed, because people who were fans of the book were disappointed before we even went. People who were not fans of the book were excited for this, subversive, saucy, erotic exploration, and walked away thinking that was really sad and also not very sexy at all. And that's subjective. Some people are going to walk away thinking that was so hot, Jake Blorty so hot, mwah, thrilled. But I don't think it's a super unpopular opinion what I have to say, that it wasn't sexy, and I think there's many reasons to that we can get into. I just think I don't connect with Emerald Fennell's work ever. I think her point of view is really weird and vague. She's never really saying anything with a fine point to it. She creates these really big premises, really big aesthetics, and she has a topic sentence, but then she doesn't have an essay, and it just falls apart every time, and that was the case here as well. Finding out after watching Saltburn and this movie, finding out that Emerald Fennell comes from immense wealth and a very posh background and went to Oxford. It made a lot of sense. It made her perspective on film make a lot more sense, because I was kind of like, oh, that's why you can't talk about class or race in any coherent way. That's why you're so reliant on the broad strokes visuals of like rich people, am I right? Because you are rich people. And it's very awkward for you to fundamentally critique capitalism or classism in any way when you're not willing to disavow it personally. And I think that came through in Wuthering Heights as well as it came through in Saltburn. So yeah, I did not find it romantic or sexy. There was sex in the movie, let me be clear. I think there was like a montage of scenes, but it didn't hit the way that I expected it to. And let me also say that I was not opposed to that idea. I was not opposed to the idea of exploring a more visceral side of this story. The story is about violence and love, and how violence and love and toxic love and attachment come together and create these like eternal cycles of abuse. Sex can be a really important part of that. I'm no prude. I'm not against sex in movies. I'm not against eroticism in movies. That's not the issue. Like, the issue is not that she made it sexual or inserted sexuality into it. The issue is that the way that she did it felt really hollow to me. It felt like a man's point of view. It did not feel like the female gaze. It felt really, or maybe it is just like this white feminist female gaze that I felt the same way about in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You from last year. TikTok gave me a strike on my account for commenting on someone's video, "This is like If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You," because I guess their filter thought that I was saying "If I had legs, I'd kick you," and I appealed it and they won't take it back. So if I get banned from TikTok, you know why. I blame Rose Byrne. Fennell also explores some elements of BDSM, and she has said in interviews that she wanted to explore the like sadomasochistic side of Wuthering Heights in the film. Again, like on surface level, on premise, I'm not opposed to that, and I think it could absolutely like have chemistry with the original text to do that. But the way that she did it was kind of silly. It was kind of like a meme of kink, and the silliness was really inappropriate the way that she inserted it and where she inserted it, and it did nothing for the story apart from add an element of humor, at least for me. Let me say something nice about the movie. I thought it was funny. I laughed throughout, and I do think that some of that is truly down to Emily Brontë's original dialogue being funny, and Emily Brontë is funny. First time I read Wuthering Heights, did not think it was funny. I was as scandalized as a Victorian woman, okay? I was like, this shit is dark and violent. Why am I reading this? Second time I read Wuthering Heights, I was laughing, and I was able to kind of like see that side of it more, because Emily Brontë does do this beautiful thing of kind of like flowing back and forth between like dark humor, comedy, like lighthearted, we've all been there situations, and deeply disturbing interpersonal dynamics. This might sound like a weird parallel, but actually it reminds me a lot of Bong Joon-ho's movies, where he's able to deliver like really good comedy that genuinely makes you laugh out loud, and then in the next scene go to the pits of the disturbing nature of humanity. And Emily Brontë does that in Wuthering Heights. Emerald Fennell, she doesn't do it. It's not quite right. I think that she dressed up this movie in a lot of like stunning visuals and aesthetics, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves, is like style over substance in filmmaking. It's this idea that like as long as there are stills from your movie that would go viral on Tumblr and that will inspire recreations of the look for years to come, then that's a good movie. That's good photography. That's good cinematography. That's great if you're making a music video. I have long said that some directors of films should just be doing music videos. Emerald Fennell is absolutely on that list. The other director on that list, I forget his name, but the guy who did Maria and Spencer, hated both of those. This felt very similar. So self-absorbed and like, oh, that's a beautiful shot right there. Let's get that. And not focused on telling a story. Film is the medium. The cinematography is the medium. Set design, costume, makeup, hair, music. It's all media through which you're supposed to tell a story. So if the story's not there, if the screenplay is not there, if the writing is not there, it will never be a good movie. And I feel like people don't understand that. People are so quick to accept mediocrity in storytelling as long as they enjoyed looking at the screen watching the movie. I think we need to have higher standards. I think we need to hold everyone to higher standards. That includes women. Do not come in my comments saying I'm not supporting women by criticizing Emerald Fennell as harshly as I am. Don't be ridiculous. I criticize men day and night. All I do on this channel is criticize male directors. I love women in film. I love Chloe Zhao. I love Eva Victor. I always support women in film when I like their work. and I give them the benefit of the doubt. And I have a female perspective to look at work by women with more generosity and more understanding than a lot of the film community of film bros does. I am not a feminist for hating Emerald Fennell's work. I cannot believe people are even having that conversation. It is the most white feminist Taylor Swift bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Get off my back, okay? We should hold women to high standards too. And if your feminism is not intersectional, it's useless to me. You can't call yourself a feminist and say that Emerald Fennell can't be criticized. She is classist and racist through her artwork. I don't know her as a person. I don't know her. But we know artists through their work, in a sense, and her work is classist and racist. If you disagree, if you don't see that, that's fine. I'm not really feeling up to the task of like explaining to people who don't want to understand why that's true. Okay, this is turning into a rant very early on, and it's getting incoherent already. Let me say I don't recommend going to see this movie. I had a fun time going to see it with my sister because we went on premiere night to the Union Square AMC. I love going to the movies in Manhattan. I love going in Brooklyn. There's always a good crowd. Everyone was a woman in that theater, almost. And there were groups of young women, groups of girls who I thought must be in high school or college. I'm 26. So for me, looking at them, I'm like, that is awesome. I want those girls in the theater. You know, that's what I was doing as a teenager with my friends and in college with my friends all the time. And I'm very worried about losing movie theater culture. So I was really happy to see them there. It echoed of Barbie summer a little bit, where I was happy to have that theater experience. I want people in the theater, but I wasn't happy that this was the movie that did that for us, because I think we all deserved so much better. Everyone in that room locked in, no phones, smiling, giggling, gasping, cheering. That's so fun. And those people who are giving their full attention and time and energy to the theater deserve a really valuable experience that respects them as people, treats them as highly intelligent viewers, and expects them to understand complex ideas, and doesn't waste their time. Emerald Fennell, I think she either thinks her viewers are stupid or she's not so bright herself, because the content of her films is so shallow, so obvious, so trite, so over in Act 1. It baffles me every time I watch one of her movies all the way through and watch it just like nothing happen, nothing mean anything. I don't want to support her. I don't want to give her money. I went to see it because I have a podcast about movies, and this is a popular one that I have strong feelings about. But if you don't feel super compelled to go see it, I don't recommend seeing it. Wait till it comes out on streaming or something. Pirate it. I don't care. Don't give her your money. And then finally, spoiler free, let me say that this movie made me feel actually more convinced that Emerald Fennell is quite racist. And it made me feel more personally taken aback by her choices than I did before seeing the movie, because it's deeper than just casting. It's the way that she tells the stories of the characters she cast with the actors she cast that really disturbs me. And I think she has revealed kind of a worldview that disgusts me and really puts me off. And I'm equally disgusted by how people are jumping and bending over backwards and doing mental gymnastics to defend this film. And let it be known, Emerald Fennell is not the only person responsible for this. Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, I also hold them accountable for this. And I don't think that whatever PR response Jacob Elordi has been giving to reporters about, this is Emerald's vision, I respect Emerald as an artist, you know, as an actor, I'm just here to deliver the director's vision. I get it. Like, he has to say that. What is he going to say? Of course he has to say that, but I think that's bullshit. And I think he's a lot more responsible for the role he has played quite literally in this bungled adaptation that dismisses the core and the essence of the source material. Something people aren't understanding, and I don't know if they're truly not understanding it or if they are being obtuse on purpose, is that fans of the book are not criticizing this movie because it's not an exact adaptation of the source material. We're not angry that Emerald Fennell made artistic choices. In fact, I think fans of classic literature are very open-minded to artistic deviations from the source material in adaptations. Clueless is famously a sort of adaptation of Emma by Jane Austen, my favorite Jane Austen novel. No one's mad about Emma in Beverly Hills, okay? No one's mad about adaptations that have the core and the soul of the story in mind when they write something new. The problem with Wuthering Heights is twofold. One, she called it Wuthering Heights. Don't even start with the bullshit of she put it in quotation marks. Don't. Give me a fucking break. Second of all, the artistic choices she made are specifically erasing the core elements of the story that make it what it is. At its core, this is a story about racism and classism and patriarchy and what it does to people. At its core, choosing to read this book and say, this is a book about class, is racism. Okay, racism is not just going, oh, I hate Black people. Racism is also ignoring racial issues and pretending they don't exist. That's exactly what Emily Brontë was pushing up against. That's why she was so subversive for her time. 1847, Victorian England. She was writing about this because no one was talking about it. She was writing about this because it is a human thing and a human empathy to see injustice and feel angry about it and write about it. It is not an American 21st century social construct. People were thinking about racism during the transatlantic slave trade. Emily Brontë was born shortly after slavery was abolished in England. She grew up in Yorkshire. Liverpool, also up north, was the slave trading capital of England. It's not like we are misunderstanding and no, Heathcliff is just tall, dark, and handsome, which Jacob Lordy is. No. No. Go watch my episode on the book. I talk a million, billion, trillion times about how he's described as dark skin, dark face, dark skin. Wishes he had fair skin, dark skin. He's not just poor. When he confesses to Nelly how jealous he is about Edgar, he doesn't say, I wish I were rich. He says, I wish I were fair-skinned and had his manners and education so that I had a chance to be rich like him. That's a different thing. That's a different thing. That's a different thing. And why was he denied an education? And why was he denied inclusion in society and good manners? Because of his race. Because of his race. Because of his race. If you refuse to see that, that's racism. Yeah, so the problem is not that Emerald Fennell didn't do the second half of the book. I'm quite open to the idea of just adapting the first half. Do you know what? There's no spoilers. This book came out in 1847. Catherine dying happens a little before halfway through the book. And then the second half of the book is an arc of Heathcliff's revenge. And the third generation of Earnshaw Lintons, Hareton, Earnshaw, Cathy, Linton, and Linton Heathcliff, that generation of cousins and their experience of the generational trauma. That's a whole half of the book. And I was actually not mad about the idea of only doing the first half of the book. Someone commented on one of my TikToks, and I think this is such a great point, that it would be really interesting to actually do just the second half of the book. And that's why the plot device of Lockwood coming to town and having Nelly tell him the story, that's why that matters and why that's useful, because you see messed up people acting horribly and treating each other despicably. And you go, or Lockwood goes, why? Why? What's going on here? Why is this a dynamic? And then you go back and say, well, this person's mother married this person's father and this person did this to them. And because of that, they never got over that. And so of course they treated her like this and that. Is that not so human? Is that not real life? You meet someone, you go, what is wrong with them? Why are they so nasty? Oh, well, her mother hates her and her mother hates her because, her dad was really hard on her and her mom died. That is true. That's true. That's generational trauma. And that's a story that Emily Brontë was telling. And so I think it would be really interesting to do like the second half of the story. You meet Cathy and Hareton and Linton and you go, what the F? How'd we get here? And then through like flashbacks and stuff, you figure it out. However, I was not opposed to limiting to the first half. Sometimes you do have to limit the scope of a story in order to get it done in movie form. Novels are a lot more flexible than movies. Movies are tight. 3-act structure, 3 hours tops. For me personally, 90 minutes tops. And so you do have to limit it. That's not the problem. Getting rid of Cathy's brother, fine. Because we're not doing the third generation, so it actually doesn't really matter. There's a lot of things that are fine. What's not fine is discarding the central themes of the story. Especially when the themes you're discarding are racism and systemic oppression. And to an extent, patriarchy. Then what's the point? What's the point? That's worthy of criticism. That is worthy of criticism. It's not being pedantic. It's not being obsessed with the book. It's basic literacy and thought. Forming thoughts. Can we try that? Let's try forming thoughts. The amount of people that are trying to come at me saying, it's not that deep. Oh, come off it. Oh, have a day off. Let's just enjoy. No, you're the reason why everything sucks now. If you consume media uncritically, you're the AI slop demand. You're the reason we have AI slop. You're the reason we have shitty fucking movies all the time because you don't give a fuck if they're good or not. But a lot of people do. And we need to criticize art. We need to criticize art. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about why it's good, why it's bad. Talking about why it's good is also critique and criticism. Both are important. Both are important. If all you see online is, oh my God, this is so iconic. Oh my God, I cried. Jacob Elordi's hot. Emerald Fennell is such a freak. I love her. Charlie XCX. That's bullshit. That's missing the entire picture. That's all just like little icing on the cake. There's no cake. Baby, there's no cake. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the plot of the movie now. How about that? Our opening scene of the movie, the screen is dark and you can hear a man like groaning in a way that feels sexual. Okay, so everyone's kind of like nervously like giggling. It goes on for a few seconds, and then when it cuts into the picture, it's a man hanging, and the noises he's making are of anguish as he dies slowly, being hanged publicly. Okay, this is embarrassing. I don't know how I missed this like massive plot point, no pun intended. My sister says it's because I was really deep in my Reese's Pieces, but I looked up the plot synopsis and I realized like the whole point of this scene is that while the man is hanging, he has a boner. I don't know what I'm allowed to say on YouTube or not. I'm not trying to be like a 12-year-old, but that's kind of the whole point of the scene, and I missed that. Thankfully, because of the like opening on the black screen with the audio, I still got the gist of like conflating sex and violence. But yeah, that's like kind of the whole point. Sorry I missed that. Immediately, I thought this was cool. I thought this was interesting. There's a lot of violence in this book. There's a lot of gore even in this book. It's a gothic novel. And so starting with something kind of shocking in its darkness and violence, not a problem to me. I did think it was kind of interesting that it was in this like very crowded town square where little child Cathy and little child Nelly are watching, because in the book they are pretty isolated and like all we hear from town, from like Gimmerton, is the chapel basically and like a little store, but this felt like a pretty big scene. And then for the rest of the movie, we never see really people other than the Earnshaws and the Lintons. It becomes very insular. But for this scene, it's like this big town square, and young Cathy, this actress, is very cute. I thought she did great. Extremely blonde with like giant blue eyes and like flushed cheeks, and she's watching in awe and she's like excited watching this man die. Her friend Nelly, she is a servant in the book. In the movie, she is a paid companion to Catherine, and her father is a lord, but she's an illegitimate child of the lord. And so she's in kind of a weird social in-between where she's not a servant per se, but she doesn't have her own household either. And she and Cathy are friends, but I mean, also, how much are you friends if you're paid to be someone's friend? Do you know what I mean? So once the man finally, they all cheer and scream and make a big fuss, and Catherine is jubilant. She loves it. She's invigorated by it. Young Cathy looks about, I don't know, she looks less than 10 years old to me. She and young Nelly are growing up together at Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights, as it's presented in the movie, I thought was really beautiful. It's like a fortressy type thing with like a courtyard in the center through which the heavy wind flows. So as Catherine is walking from like one side of the house to the other through the courtyard, the wind is like whipping in her hair. I thought that was pretty cool. And everything about it is a little bit off kilter and asymmetrical. It does look not very well kept. But in the beginning of the movie, it's not a shithole. It's just like a humble family home. Interestingly, Nelly in the movie is an Asian woman. She's played by Hong Chow, who is Vietnamese American. And this is a choice, certainly a choice. So in the book, Nelly is white. Nelly is white English, like from Yorkshire, like most of the rest of the characters. And she's our narrator. So it becomes clear from the start of the movie that we are removing that function. We're removing that kind of layer to the story of Mr. Lockwood comes to town to rent out Thrushcross Grange from Heathcliff like 20 years in the future from their childhood. And he gets the whole backstory in the form of like essentially gossip from Mrs. Dean, from Nelly. We're removing that function in the movie. That's fine. I kind of expected that. But in doing so, the characterization of Nelly becomes a lot more ambiguous because most of her characterization we're getting direct from her mouth. And so we're judging her based on what she says happened, which you have to take with a grain of salt because she could be an unreliable narrator. But we're also judging her character by what she says about other people, by how judgmental she is. And so you get this like pretty complicated picture of who Nelly is as a person. And I come away from the book finding her to be, to her core, good, well-meaning, but she is judgmental and she does meddle. But I liked her generally. I found her to be like a pretty normal person from a small town who knows everybody's business and cares about everybody's business. And I don't find her to be malicious. She's never malicious. She can make mistakes and do the wrong thing, or she can be kind of like harsh and very by the book about things, but she's pretty much a good person in the book. She's there for Heathcliff when no one else is there for him. She helps him have some more dignity. She builds him up. She raises with love and tenderness children of parents who abuse and neglect them. She does a lot of things outside of her job that she's paid to do to try to help other people. It just so happens that she also messes up sometimes and hurts more than she helps. And she also oversteps in imposing her judgment about right and wrong onto other people. In the movie, she's kind of more of a villain. She really is an antagonist in the movie. And so we don't have her point of view on things. We're not hearing from her point of view. And her actions are made worse. So for example, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but in the book, when Catherine confesses to Nelly that Edgar has proposed to her and she's asking Nelly for advice, what should I do? Should I accept it? Da-da-da-da-da. I still love Heathcliff. Da-da-da-da-da. Nelly knows that Heathcliff overhears her up to the point where she says bad things about him and then he leaves and he doesn't hear the part where Catherine says how she loves him. Nelly knows that. She doesn't tell Catherine right away, but she tells Catherine later that night when Heathcliff is missing. So pretty quickly she tells Catherine, okay? And her not telling Catherine before then feels more justifiable in the context of the book because Catherine kicks off at anything and everything. If you tell Catherine something she doesn't want to hear, she might go off on you. Plus, she's like chronically ill and the doctor has said not to stress her out or irritate her. So you can understand why Nelly would not tell Catherine right away, but she tells Catherine pretty quickly once she realizes that this is serious. In the movie, Nelly, first of all, intentionally coaxes Catherine out to say negative things about Heathcliff when she realizes he's listening. Second of all, she makes eye contact with Heathcliff so that he knows that she knows that he's there, which makes him think that Catherine knows and said things about him anyways. Third of all, she does not tell Catherine ever until years later. Heathcliff and Catherine discuss that night and it becomes clear that there's a misunderstanding and that Catherine didn't know, and then Catherine realizes Nelly lied to her. That really villainizes Nelly. It makes her seem like a sort of looming malevolent presence, jealous of Catherine and always waiting to harm her in some way. In the book, there's an element of maybe she's jealous of Catherine. I talked about that in my book episode, but it's not the most prominent feature of their relationship, I would say. The most prominent feature of their relationship is that Nelly is just tired of Catherine's crap because she's a hypocrite and selfish and doesn't take advice, and that Catherine still keeps asking Nelly for advice anyway, even though she knows she's not going to listen. That's the dynamic. The dynamic is not Catherine naively thinks this is her best friend and then her best friend wrongs her. Oh, a second thing that happens just like this is that in the book, when Catherine gets sick after Heathcliff and Edgar fight, the reason why no one believes her is because she explicitly tells Nelly, I'm gonna pretend to be sick to teach Edgar a lesson. Explicitly says that to Nelly. Nelly tells her not to do that, but Nelly also tells Edgar, your wife just told me she's going to fake sick to stress you out on purpose. That's why Edgar doesn't believe that Catherine is sick. That's why Nelly doesn't believe that Catherine is sick. It's not just because Nelly is a bitch. And so it places a lot of blame in the movie on Nelly for Catherine losing Heathcliff and dying. It's kind of heavily Nelly's fault in the movie. And the way that the script is written, the way that the performance is done, Nelly is very much an antagonist and she seems like a bad person and a malicious friend and very jealous and conniving and scheming. So another point on me getting really weird bad vibes from Emerald Fennell. Wait, my dog wants to come hang out.
Say hi, Suki.
If you're on video, you can see my dog. Casting a person of color as Nelly in this sort of like colorblind casting way, and then also making her character 10 times more diabolical so that the like image is a person of color tormenting these white people for like no reason really other than a good dose of jealousy and vindictiveness. And it reminds me of in Saltburn how Barry Keoghan's character is like really messed up and wronging these super ultra wealthy people out of jealousy and vindictiveness. And it feels like this worldview of like, if you are a wealthy white person, people are going to try to wrong you and take advantage of you, and they're going to be jealous, and you have to watch out and watch your back. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that's what Emerald Fennell is thinking. I'm saying that's like the kind of world that's being presented in the art, and it really, on top of everything else, that left a bad taste in my mouth. So that's Nelly. She sucks in this movie. She's very hateable. Also, the way they did her hair, that felt like a microaggression. Her hair was so bad. And then Cathy's hair was so beautiful. I don't know. Okay, moving on, back to the plot. At Wuthering Heights, it's just Cathy's father, herself, and Nelly. So her brother Hindley from the book doesn't exist. And accordingly, her father kind of becomes that character. Rather than being like generally benevolent, but maybe somewhat like emotionally neglectful, he is a total alcoholic, gambler, emotionally and physically abusive, unpredictable, maybe sort of like traits of narcissism as a parent, because he's like obsessed with his own birthday and so deeply hurt that Cathy was not home for dinner for his birthday when she's like 8. So he's messed up and he's quite abusive. And that's kind of like the surrogate for Hindley as an abuser in the book. I don't hate that. Like I said, like you have to simplify something. So fine. But then the way that he brings Heathcliff home is so different and confusing. He brings Heathcliff home saying he found him on the streets in Liverpool, like in the book, and says that he brought him home as a pet for Cathy, as a gift for Cathy, a pet. And Cathy's so excited. She's like, oh yeah, I'll take such good care of him. That was cute. I thought that was very cute to Cathy's character. Like, young Cathy is done well, and the actress is very good in the sense that she has this kind of like wildness to her and this crudeness and violence. And she's like this kind of little girl that like you cannot tame or control. I think that is the Catherine that I know. Go ahead, Suki. And then Heathcliff is played by the little boy from Adolescence. And he's fantastic too. I really like him and I think he did great. And then he is kind of like scared and doesn't speak English, it seems like at first. And Cathy takes to him immediately. She's trying to teach him how to read, yada yada. They're running around the moors together. They become better friends than Cathy was with Nelly. And Nelly kind of looks on with envy. That's reasonable to me. I think in the book, the reason why Nelly is cruel to Heathcliff is more explicitly because of him being dark. Like, she's scared of him. She says when he first arrives and he's like speaking gibberish and he looks like a gypsy boy or whatever, she's terrified of him. And that's why she kind of like bullies him until she realizes he's not so bad. But in this version, it's more like she just quietly dislikes him because he takes Cathy from her in a way. Okay. But they get in trouble one day because they're out playing on the moors. It's pouring rain. And little Heathcliff is like, Cathy, we have to get back. Like, your dad is going to be so angry with us. We got to go. And Cathy's like, wait, let's just wait for the rain to pass. And he's like, the rain's not going to pass. Like, look, the sky is all gray. And she goes, no, look, there's a little patch of blue. Okay, yes. Like, do you believe in hope or not? Okay. So they stay out late, of course. They come back and it's her father's birthday, and he throws a absolute tantrum about it. Like I said, kind of like a narcissistic vibe, and like throws all the plates off the table, and he's really angry. Clearly he has beat them before because they both look terrified, and Heathcliff takes the blame for Cathy, says, it was my fault. I said I wanted to stay out. Cathy wanted to come back, which of course is the opposite of what happened. And in doing that, Cathy was not thinking about, like, in staying out late, Cathy wasn't thinking about the fact that it's probably going to be worse for Heathcliff. Right? Because he's not the biological child. He's not part of the family technically, and he is treated like a pet. I think that's true to book Cathy as well, that she is reckless and doesn't always consider how Heathcliff is going to be treated differently than she is. Heathcliff pushes Cathy out of the room to save her from the beating, and he gets beat so badly that he has gashes all over his back later at night. And Cathy goes to see him at night, and his bedroom is like a loft in the barn, like I said, across from that like windy courtyard where her bedroom is, and they can see each other from the windows, but she has to cross the windy courtyard to get to him. Great set design. Really liked it. But she goes to see him at night and say, like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, you shouldn't have taken the blame for me. Look what happened. You got hurt. And this is where it felt a little bit weird, and like we didn't do enough thinking about the timeline and stuff, because this interaction between them is bordering on like romantic love in a way, and they're still too young for that, where I feel it should still be like sibling love. But he says like these beautiful things to her, like I would do it 100 times, I would do it every day for you, Cathy, like. And he tells her he loves her after she closes her eyes and she pretends she can't hear him, but she smiles to herself. So yeah, that does feel more like a 13 to 16-year-old thing, maybe like a high schooler, not an elementary schooler. And maybe I'm just in my 20s now and I don't know what kids look like and I don't know how old they are. That's possible too. So I will take that. We go from that, seeing him sleeping on his stomach next to Cathy with like the open wounds on his back, fading into Jacob Elordi with scars on his back. My sister for some reason thought the scars were so funny. She was like, that was just so silly. Like, oh, he has scars on his back. And no, that's not in the book explicitly, but he is beat very badly by Hindley in the book. And not for Catherine, but often because of Catherine, I guess, or they both are because of each other. Anyways, now the time jump is pretty intense because Jacob Elordi is what? Like, I think he's around my age, right? Like mid to late 20s. And Margot Robbie's 35. They do look plausibly like about the same age. I'm not saying like Margot Robbie looks old, but it is very confusing how old they're supposed to be. It was hard for me because I'm going in with the knowledge of the book and the events that were taking place. I know that when they were taking place in the book, they were 15, 16. But then I'm looking at Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie and I go, I know I'm not supposed to think they're 15, 16. But then some of the plot points make less sense because Cathy's going through like a sexual awakening where she sees Joseph, who, by the way, in the movie, Joseph is like hot and young, which is so funny because in the book he's like super old and like a fire and brimstone preacher and so mean to everyone. But whatever, he's hot in the movie, great. As is Zillah, the housekeeper, other than Mrs. Dean, who's always at the opposite house for Mrs. Dean, who comes up like twice in the book. But Zillah and Joseph hook up in like the barn or something, and Cathy accidentally catches them and sees them, and it is like kind of BDSM-y, like kinky stuff, where he's like, you've been a bad girl or something. I don't know. I can't stress enough how unsexy it felt, but that is subjective. That's subjective. Just my opinion. And Cathy accidentally sees them, and then Heathcliff catches her catching them. And he like covers her eyes and her mouth. He like lays on top of her. She's laying on the floor looking through the floorboards at them. He lays on top of her, covers her eyes and her mouth. What are we supposed to think of that? He's being protective. He's trying to shield her from losing her innocence. It felt like when your parents cover your eyes, like when you're watching a movie as a kid and they're like, you should not see the sex scene. But then why cover her mouth? Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe so that she wouldn't make a noise and reveal herself and then embarrass herself. But of course that feels very sexual, like laying on top of her, covering her eyes and her mouth is like mirroring the power dynamic in the sex scene below that they're both watching. So it's this very charged moment, and she runs away after. She gets freaked out and runs away. And it starts this like sexual fascination she has with Heathcliff. It's like, does feel like the kind of feelings and experiences that happen to a young teenage girl. Obviously everyone goes through this at different times in life, and I get it was Victorian times, but like, you know, biologically we're the same. We're still human. So it felt a bit weird for that to be happening to her, to Margot Robbie, 35 in real life, maybe 25 in the movie. Do you know what I mean? I was like, what's happening here? What's happening here? And then this thing happens where Margot Robbie goes out into the moors and like hides behind a rock to touch herself, seemingly for the first time. Now, listen, do I get the metaphor of like the wildness of the moors? That's where she's truly free. That's where she can be sexually liberated. That's where she can really be herself. And when she's married to Edgar and moves in at Thrushcross Green, she's trapped and she can never be as free as she was out in the wind on the moors. Totally. Okay, totally there with you. But watching a grown woman hide behind a big rock out in an open field full of fog and wind to touch herself standing up did feel deeply insane. And it was very weird because she has her own room. Like she has her own bedroom at Wuthering Heights. I don't know. But okay, we wanted that scene out on the moors. fine. For some reason, Heathcliff is like stalking her out there. He's looking for her and he hears her before he sees her and he like comes upon her. Obviously, she's like humiliated and he's like, come on, Cathy, nothing to be embarrassed about, girl. We all have desires. I did kind of like his reaction and I think it was a good moment from the acting for them to show that they have this really tight bond where she can be so humiliated and take it out on him and kind of be mad at him and he can just be like laughing at her, but also not in a cruel way, you know. I forget what happens first, if she like grabs a chunk of grass and dirt and shoves it in his mouth, or if before that he takes her fingers and puts them in his mouth and like tastes her and he says, now I can track you to the edge of the world like a dog. Yeah, I guess it's just not for me. It's so Emerald Fennell. It's so like concuss me with what you're trying to tell me, bang me over the head with it. And I'm not being prudish. I'm not saying like, yuck, that's gross. I completely get what she was going for. And I think the like tension of not having sex, but having intimacy and like knowledge of each other sexually in some way when you're really supposed to be friends, I see where we're going, but it felt so cartoonish to me. The fingers and mouths got old pretty quickly. Everything can't be shoving fingers in mouths. We gotta have a different trick. It felt like on Love Island when they do the heart rate challenge and then they get nervous and they don't know what to do because they're not professional strippers. So they just like take everyone's fingers and put them in their mouth and they're like, ooh, or like put their fingers on, ooh, and everyone's like, ooh, sexy. And it's like just like this knee-jerk thing. I don't know what's a sexy thing to do that's not kissing them. I guess I'll just put their fingers in my mouth. And we do that like 500 times in this movie, plus putting other shit in their mouths and putting their fingers in other shit. I just feel like we gotta come up with something else. So that happens, and now there's this like weird tension because they're basically like adoptive siblings. They've grown up together, but now they're grown-ups. And Cathy's having this sexual awakening, and she is like fascinated by Heathcliff after this like interaction on the moors, and she can't focus on anything. She's frustrated. And I think this is an interesting thing to explore, especially for the time period. Wuthering Heights was written and published during the Victorian era, but it takes place mostly during the Georgian era. Even today, like talking about women's sexual repression and shame and society is great. And I think that's great. Cool. Let's talk about patriarchy. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about women's desire. As this is happening, Wuthering Heights is falling to ruin because Mr. Earnshaw, Cathy's dad, has gotten worse and worse in his like gambling and drinking. So they're really poor. Heathcliff is still like working on the property. They're like a pig farm, I guess, so that we could get a scene with like a bunch of pig blood. Cool. They don't have enough like firewood to build fires, and it's freezing up there. So there's this whole like atmosphere of poverty and coldness. It's very like Oliver Twist. It's very Dickensian. Dickensian? I don't know how you say that word. I've only seen it written down. It's very Charles Dickens. Heathcliff at one point like breaks a chair to make firewood to keep Cathy warm. Okay, so they hear about the Lintons moving in. Catherine can't wait for them to come visit and say hi, and then she's so offended they won't come say hi, and she's like agonizing over whether she should go over there or not. And finally she decides to like go down and spy on them herself. So she goes down to Thrushcross Grange and is like spying over the wall. It's this huge property mansion, like very, very wealthy. We see what looks like a date happening with Edgar Linton, who I knew was Edgar Linton immediately because he's like the man at Thrushcross Grange. And then this woman who I wasn't sure who she was at first, because in the book I know that Isabella is Edgar's sister and they're both like very blonde. And then in the movie, Edgar is being played by this actor Shahzad Latif, who is of mixed Pakistani, English, and Scottish descent. And he does look like a person of color. He looks like a South Asian man. And then the woman he's talking to is the same actress who played Veronica in Saltburn. I think her name is Veronica in that movie. Oh, Venetia, not Veronica. Alison Oliver is the same actress who played Venetia in Saltburn, so she's worked with Emerald Fennell before, much like Jacob. Interestingly enough, she and Jacob Elordi played siblings in Saltburn, and in this movie they play Isabella and Heathcliff, who end up together. But yeah, so she's a white woman. I thought her performance was the best in the whole movie. I think she's hilarious, and she did the best she could with what she was given. But it was this weird dynamic where they're like on a date, and she's immediately played for laughs. She's very silly. She's very like, this is another thing that rubbed me the wrong way, by the way. It's everything all put together, not anything in isolation, but she's played for jokes immediately on sight because she has the biggest, poofiest, brown curly frizzy hair like Mia Thermopolis before her makeover in The Princess Diaries, and glasses, and is like wearing ribbons and stuff. I don't know. I mean, look at me. Look at my hair. I took that personally. Normally I wear glasses, but I can't with the light. So she's like yapping on and on about Romeo and Juliet, and she's recapping the plot of Romeo and Juliet to Edgar, and the bit is that he's so bored he's not into this woman. That's what I thought it was. But as the audience, we also have to listen to her recap the plot of Romeo and Juliet, which we know. And it's the clumsiest, like, CW tween show BS where they'll be, like, reading A Midsummer Night's Dream in English class, and then they all kind of, like, fall in love with each other, and it's, like, low-key the same message as A Midsummer Night's Dream. But in order for the audience to get it, they have to, like, read out A Midsummer Night's Dream and talk about it with us. That's what this felt like, of her being like, I'm doing Wuthering Heights, but really I'm doing Romeo and Juliet. Do you get it? It's so deep, and it's a Shakespearean tragedy. Okay, sure. It turns out that that is Isabella, but we don't know her last name in the movie. She is Edgar's ward, not his sister. And I think a ward is someone that you're, like, legally the guardian of, kind of, maybe temporarily, or you, like, sponsor them, family friend, she needs to stay in this area, something like that. So they're not related by blood. So it is possible that she was interested in him romantically, but it wasn't totally clear. I mean, he obviously wasn't into her. I was so confused by this. Like, not that this is, like, necessarily super bad to change. I just was confused why change it, and then I realized why. I think what happened, this is all conjecture, this is what I think happened to make sense of this. Emerald Fennell loves Alison Oliver and wanted her to play Isabella in the movie. Great. I love her too. I think she's fab. She's white. If she were to cast Edgar as her brother, she would cast a white man. Maybe she was already under fire at that point, or anticipating fire for casting a white man as Heathcliff. So she's like, I need some color in this cast. I need to make this, like, woke, PC, diverse DEI. That's, like, what her brain is saying. So she wants to cast a person of color as Edgar. How to do that without then also having to cast a person of color as his sister, make it his ward. Now we're changing the plot to make sure that you can cast your white actress as Isabella. And I love that actress, and I think she was the best part of the movie. But do you hear what I'm saying? It's so weird. None of it feels genuine. This kind of colorblind casting is not the same as how I perceive something like Bridgerton to do colorblind casting, where they will do their best to kind of weave in, like, an acknowledgement of race, while also creating a fantasy world where, like, the British Empire was not as violently, vitriolically racist as it actually was, right? Like, they're playing in this world where we're like, okay, but we want to have fun, and we don't want to watch people of color suffer in every period piece. Let's watch them have fun and dress up. But also acknowledge, like, there's always plot lines about Kate Sharma, about her family in India and going to India and blah, 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 blah. Is it perfect? No. But you can feel that there's, like, good intent behind it, and that they're conscious of the power they have as, like, a big Netflix show, that they are also platforming actors via the show, and that they're using the opportunity of colorblind casting to blow up, like, new faces and people of color who otherwise would not have the opportunity for these kinds of roles in period pieces that people love. So you can see how, like, inside the film and then zoom out outside the film, there's a purpose behind it, and they're trying to make it make sense. And I think very few people are offended by Bridgerton. I could be wrong, though. I haven't watched it beyond, like, the second season, I don't think. In this case, the colorblind casting feels like it's very much done with the intent of protecting against inevitable criticism. It feels very much shallow, performative, ticking a box. And the reason why it feels that way is not because I don't like Emerald Fennell. It's because the characters she casts as people of color, she has changed their character from the book to make them far worse people. And then in counterpart, the people she has cast as white people, whether they are or are not in the book, she has whitewashed their character, literally, and cleaned up their character to make them better people. It's very, very strange. Very strange. So, like, Margot Robbie as Catherine, for example, for the most part, her character is pretty cleaned up and whitewashed. She, like, sticks up for, or tries to stick up for Heathcliff when they get in trouble. She also is much more under financial stress when she chooses Edgar. She kind of does have to choose Edgar for money because they literally don't have firewood to, like, heat the house, and they have no money. They're broke. So it's like her life Her father's life and Heathcliff's lives are at stake. And it makes sense why she needs to social climb. In the book, it's not quite so dire. She says it would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now, but she's not saying, I have no choice, we're gonna starve. And maybe I'm supposed to like infer that. So if someone in good faith wants to let me know and speak like an adult with respect in the comments, let me know if I'm like missing that from the book. But I didn't think that they were like completely broke, gonna starve and die when she marries Edgar in the book. I thought she enjoyed the status and wealth, not that she needed it to survive. And those are different things. However, in the movie, I don't think that's a bad choice to frame it that way because it's a lens on like patriarchy and class, right? That women would be forced to use their bodies, use their beauty as a means for survival. That is a compelling point to make. Now, the issue that I have with it is that it really absolves Cathy of responsibility for her decision to marry Edgar because she didn't have a decision. She didn't have a choice. She was forced to do it. I don't know, but I found her to be much more sympathetic in the movie than she is on paper. She is much more of like a protagonist you can root for. And when she does bad things, it's funny. Heathcliff similarly extremely cleaned up his character. In the book, he is abusive to Isabella, point blank period. He tricks her into marriage and then immediately is physically and emotionally and probably sexually abusive to her. And it's not like funny or kinky. Okay, in typical Christy fashion, I get distracted and go down a rabbit hole about Isabella's character here. So I just need to finish my thought that I was saying, which is that is changed in the movie, which cleans up Heathcliff's character because he goes from being an abuser to not being an abuser. And so what I was saying is then Cathy and Heathcliff, who are both cast as white, Heathcliff, who's not white in the book, their characters are cleaned up and whitewashed. And then by comparison, Nelly, at least, who is white in the book, person of color in the movie, is way, way worse. And Edgar, to a lesser extent, I did kind of think he was worse in some parts of the movie, but other parts not. The effect is that the colorblind casting casts white people as heroes and people of color as antagonists and or barriers to the love between the white people. It's very weird coming from Emerald Fennell, and I don't think it's something that we should be writing off as like, oh, it's a coincidence, whatever, it's colorblind casting. I think it's bad. Thank you. So Isabella has the courage to flee and escape from him after attempting multiple times to escape when she's pregnant with his kid, bearing in mind that they were not consensually having sex. And she finally flees because she's afraid he will kill her. That's not a character meant to be the punchline of jokes. That's a character, one of the characters with the most dignity and moral credit in the book is Isabella. So she gets turned into this like manic pixie dream girl, quirky girl in the movie who is kind of stupid. It's a fine line. I didn't mind her being quirky and silly and funny. I minded her being what read to me as kind of genuinely stupid, because she's not. And again, this is the type of thing where I'm talking about the reason why it's wrong to change from the text in the adaptation is because you're stealing the soul of the story. The soul of the story of Isabella is empowerment and survival. To turn her into a joke, how's that feminist? Not just a joke, but to make the joke that she consensually enters into a BDSM relationship with Heathcliff where she consents to being abused and she doesn't want to be saved. It's not the place, like time and place. Time and place. She's a survivor. Emily Brontë wrote about a woman who survived domestic abuse and rape and violence in 1847. And she wrote about her with empathy and dignity and courage. And in 2026, taking that and turning it into like, I think Isabella liked it. It feels really in poor taste, I fear. Where was I? Okay, so Cathy's spying on Edgar and Isabella, right? I just gave you the rundown on the deal with Edgar and Isabella in this story. But Cathy's looking over the wall, spying on them at Thrushcross Grange, but she accidentally falls because Isabella sees her and screams. And then Cathy falls and hurts her ankle. Edgar goes out to find her and she's like, who, me? Margot Robbie is very funny. I think she's at her best as a comic actress. Like, who, what are you, a fucking owl? As opposed to like, what was I made for? You know what I mean? But they, of course, take her in, help her heal. It's interesting that in the book, it was her and Heathcliff going to play a prank together. But again, they were younger. So I think this made sense to make it more age appropriate, that she already had in her mind that she wanted to court Edgar for money and was spying on him and fell, and that she was without Heathcliff because Heathcliff is jealous and doesn't want her having anything to do with Edgar. That makes sense. They take her in and help her heal, and they, just like in the book, they dote on her. They treat her like a doll. I'll get back to that. And then when she comes back to Wuthering Heights, everything is different, and she and Heathcliff have this like huge divide between them now. He is avoiding her when she gets back, which she's upset by, and she becomes defensive immediately instead of like offering an olive branch or trying to reestablish a connection. Very true to those characters in this part of the story. Heathcliff continues to avoid her, and she continues to see Edgar, and Edgar comes to the house at one point, comes up to Wuthering Heights to propose. Before Cathy can greet him, the servants or whoever let him in, and he sees like in what a state the place is and sees her dad being like an alcoholic mess basically, and she's very embarrassed, but he doesn't care and he proposes to her anyway. And then we get that scene where she's talking to Nelly and saying like, I accepted his proposal. Was I right? Like, should I have done that? What should I do? And Nelly's like hesitant to give advice, but then she starts asking Cathy questions and trying to get her to like talk about why she decided to and help her like come to her own conclusion about it. I thought this was one of the most exciting scenes in the book because it's one of the most like explicitly sentimental moments where she's like really saying how she feels to Nelly and therefore to us, whereas most of the other time it's like you can tell how she feels by her actions, but she's denying them. I think of course you have to include the quote, whatever souls are made of, his and mine are the same. He's more myself than I am. You have to include that. That is beautiful, beautiful writing from the book. But it was taken out of context a little bit, and it was made like purely romantic. Whereas for me, like in the book reading it, I felt that it was also already a twisted statement of codependency because it captured all of this like complicated meaning around someone being you, someone that you love being the same as you, being one with you, sharing your soul. Is that love? Is that codependency? Is that attachment? But in the movie, we don't like have all of the same context around it, obviously. So it just felt a little bit like she has a crush on Heathcliff since they had this weird sexual encounter and they're best friends and there could be something there, but she kind of has to marry Edgar for financial reasons. And it just felt deeper than that to me in the real story. It feels so much deeper than that. It's like she knows deep down that she's losing Heathcliff basically for good here. Now, I talked about this earlier, but in this scene, Nelly sees Heathcliff walking by the window or something, and Heathcliff makes eye contact with her. So she knows Heathcliff can hear Cathy, and Heathcliff knows that Nelly knows that he can hear Cathy, and Heathcliff assumes that Nelly tells Cathy that he's listening, or tells her after that he had been listening. And so he listens at the door while Cathy says all of the negative things. It's the classic like rom-com misunderstanding trope of her being like, I would never have even considered Edgar if my father did not degrade Heathcliff, so what am I supposed to do? It would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now. He walks away after hearing that. And then she says, but I love him. He'll never know that I love him. His and mine are the same. Da, 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 da. On top of Nelly's knowing that he's listening and not telling Cathy or anything, she also like prompts Cathy to be like, so why can't you marry Heathcliff? And she kind of like intentionally sets her up to say something nasty, knowing Heathcliff is listening. That's diabolical. Mrs. Ellen Dean that I know would not do that. So again, this just goes back to my point of like making this character worse, making her more of a villain, which in turn makes Cathy more sympathetic, and casting a woman of color to play Nelly and casting a white woman to play Cathy. Like, you have to see why this looks so bad. And it's not being nitpicky and it's not being like overly sensitive. It's a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern of messaging from Emerald Fennell, which discredits her because it's not a one-off thing. And I do feel like it's like an impulse she has. I do feel like she doesn't even realize she's doing it, but she's doing it. So Heathcliff runs off, as we know. Cathy freaks out. Nelly does not tell her why Heathcliff has run off, even though in the book she does. We see Heathcliff riding off into the orange sunset on a horse with his long hair, which I think is like Gone with the Wind vibes. Cool. Cut to a year later, Cathy gets married to Edgar, and we get this scene of Nelly lacing her up into her corset on bearskin, which I know all of the like historical costume and historical fashion people were losing their minds about. I went down like a rabbit hole on YouTube a couple times about like historical fashion and historical costuming in film. My favorite YouTuber about historical clothing, I'm gonna put her name on the screen. I bought her book. Wait, hang on. I bought her book. Karolina Zebrowska. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She's Polish. Yeah, she's really smart and she does great videos about historical costuming in film without being like super judgmental or like, this is all wrong, this is bad. She just shares like, if you're curious, here's what the clothing would have looked like at this time. Here's how the costuming differed from it. I think she's brilliant and has helped me understand a lot of like costuming in film. So check her out. I know from people like Carolina on YouTube that corsets were not like really an oppressive thing for women as much as we imagine them to be in pop culture and in art. They're only like so horrible and oppressive if you're like really tight lacing, or like modern corsets like the one I'm wearing that I got on Depop are obviously not like made correctly to be like tight just at the waist but then bigger at the bust so you can still breathe and stuff, which is why I cannot tolerate wearing fashion corsets. But that in movies a lot of times they're used as like a visual metaphor for patriarchy and oppression of women historically, which some people say like, as long as we know that that's not actually what the corset was, fine, like it's art, do your thing. Other people say like, the more you do it, the more people genuinely think this is true, the more we're overlooking like other interesting ways of showing this, etc., etc. So I see both sides of it. I am of the camp that I like good, creative, beautiful storytelling costume design, and I think the costume designer should be very aware of historical accuracy and choose to break it intentionally when appropriate. The same way I think like an impressionist painter should know how to paint realistically and choose to do it their way. It shouldn't be like because you don't know or don't care. Do you get what I'm saying? Anyway, so on the costumes in the movie, I didn't really like them, but I also didn't hate them. There was one that I loved that like blew me away, which was Catherine's like indigo blue, like squid ink dress that was so reflective and looked almost liquid. I don't know what material that is. Is that like organza? I don't know, I'm not a fashion person, but that was beautiful. Loved it. I didn't mind mixing in modern elements like the sunglasses, whatever. It did feel very Sofia Coppola, Marie Antoinette referential. I don't know. I was kind of like so focused on other things I didn't even care that much. Her wedding scene, she has Nelly like lace her up into the corset as tight as possible with no chemise under it, nothing in between the corset and her skin, so it's like squishing and squishing her skin. It's so trite. It's so been done 10 billion times before. Give me a break, Emerald. Give me a break. Like, oh, she's constrained by society's expectations of her. We've seen it so many times before. It just irritated me a little bit. Like I kind of rolled my eyes at that point because this whole movie is like a montage of interesting stills, not a story. Then she's like walking across the moors all the way from Wuthering Heights to Thrushcross Grange, I guess, by herself. I liked what they did a lot of like veiling moments, like a chiffon veil and then the like wind whipping it around her face. I do have to say though that Frankenstein in 2025, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, that costuming is a level above, in my opinion, Wuthering Heights. And as far as who did pops of red better, who did red chiffon flowing in the wind better, that goes to Frankenstein. Edgar and Isabella have like redone the whole house for Cathy. He made the wallpaper of her room like the color of her skin and her freckles. So she's like entrapped by her own self. It's the golden handcuffs, right? It's the gilded cage. Isabella cleared out her ribbon room for dresses from Cathy. They made to order from all around the world. I don't think in the book the Lintons were that rich, but I don't care. Like exaggerate their wealth. That's fine. That's fine by me. The house is beautiful. Again, the architecture and interior design is beautiful. It's very dramatic. Everything is very stately. Large rooms, symmetrical framing, geometric. Every room has like a theme to it. It's peak like consumerism. Even though this is like the 1780s or 90s, like this felt like 2026 consumerism of the wealthy, and they are always eating like these elaborate but like kind of gross things. And again, just like montages of everything. A montage of her living this lavish life at Thrushcross Grange, but she's not really happy because she's thinking of Heathcliff. And then what do you know, one day Heathcliff shows up. And he's hot now. And in the book, he like comes to Thrushcross Grange. In the movie, he kind of just like appears out of the mist in the moors as Cathy is walking out in the moors. And I have to say, in the theater, this was such a fun moment because you see like a shadowy figure and the mist is moving, and then all of a sudden he comes into frame and he's got a haircut and he's like hot now and he's dressed nice. And the whole everyone went, because again, it's just so fun to experience movies in community. It's so fun to experience art in community. But I thought that was a fun moment. And it is true to the book that he comes back hot, and that's like a plot point. Genuinely, that is true to the book. This movie was at its best. This movie was at its peak doing the like awkward, tense scenes with Edgar, Isabella, Cathy, and Heathcliff. And to that point, this is why I think Emerald should have done a Jane Austen, because she does like funny, awkward social dynamics well, but the Brontë sisters are gothic and they're not satirical social commentary. It's social commentary, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a different tone and it's a different depth and subversion. Whereas Jane Austen, I love and respect Jane Austen. I'm not comparing her to the Brontë sisters and finding her wanting, but her genre was different, her class was different, her geography was different, her point of view was different, and much more aligned, I have to say, with Emerald Fennell's. Because Jane Austen was writing about class and patriarchy and everything, but mostly upper middle class, and she mostly had a lighthearted core to her stories, a through line of humor, a happy ending, good people who you root for. She wasn't exploring the depths of human suffering and cruelty. And I just feel like maybe that's more suited to Emerald Fennell's wheelhouse. Just saying. But it was really funny, those scenes in Thrushcross Grange with the four of them, where Edgar's really jealous and Cathy and Heathcliff are like exchanging looks, whatever. Isabella, like I said, Alison Oliver is brilliant because she immediately was getting the whole theater cracking up with her like flirting with Heathcliff, like putting her dress off her shoulder a little bit. And she played well the role of like the smitten younger girl, like first love, can't believe how handsome this guy is, whatever. Heathcliff is basically mute, like he barely talks. So I found it hard to connect with him in that way, because in the book when he comes back, he is talking to Cathy. He is declaring how much he's missed her and how he did all of this for her, and he can't believe that she's excited to see him. He didn't expect that. Now he's gonna spend more time with her. In the movie, he's much more kind of like already locked off Heathcliff that we get in like the second half of the book. So I just found it a little bit strange. They engage in an affair, an emotional and sexual affair. And I think this is where Emerald Fennell really failed to deliver on the promise of the premise, which was erotica. And their like sex scenes and the sex montage felt so, I don't know, it wasn't that interesting. It wasn't that provocative. It wasn't that sensual. I'm not mad that they had a sexual affair. That's obviously not in the book, but in the book they do cross boundaries for sure. And when Cathy is dying, Heathcliff comes to her and they hug and kiss, and she sits in his lap and won't let him leave, even though she knows that Edgar is coming up the stairs. She stays in Heathcliff's lap, hugging him and kissing him. So it's not like that was that far away from what Emily Brontë intended, which was at least an emotional affair and then a little bit of like a physical affair just at the end when Cathy knows she's gonna go. So in terms of like making a modern adaptation and making it more exaggerated, more camp about everything, make them actually have an affair, have sex, fine. I just found myself like tuned out and not really caring because I didn't feel the extreme tension of her having abandoned Heathcliff, not choosing him having abandoned her, and them now being too prideful, both of them, to admit their feelings. We kind of skipped over that whole like too prideful to admit their feelings, and they have this like declaration of love that they really had when Catherine was dying in the book, and then it was over. Like, they couldn't admit their feelings for each other or apologize until she was literally dying, and that is the tragedy. The tragedy is that they never got to be together. But then in the movie, when they're having this affair, they are pretty much together. Yes, it's an affair, it's illicit, it's not easy, but they get to be together. They tell each other how much they love each other. They have sex. They experience the manifestation of that love. And so it doesn't feel as tragic as if they were prideful and selfish and bitter till the end and never told each other how they really felt until the end, which is the book. Again, like Fennell's at her best when she's doing like comedy and awkwardness. So her doing the whole thing of Cathy humiliating Isabella in front of Heathcliff when she finds out that Isabella has a crush on him, I thought that was really good. I've already spoken a bit on how I feel about the whole Heathcliff and Isabella thing. So in the movie, Heathcliff goes to Isabella once Catherine rejects him. So Cathy finally tells him that she's pregnant with Edgar's kid. Also true in the book, but I don't think she ever told him that. He, in response, like they're having sex and he is like getting really possessive and he says like, I don't care, I'll kill him. I'll kill Edgar tomorrow if you ask me to. True to the book, guys. True to the book. He says the only reason he won't kill Hindley, I think it is in the book, is because of Catherine. But the same is true of Edgar. And that, for some reason, really turns Cathy off. And she's like, what? Would you really? This is wrong. This is wrong. And she like breaks up with him. This was really weird to me because Cathy's character, like I said, is like kind of whitewashed. Like, oh, now Cathy is squeamish about threats of violence and possessiveness. That's not the Cathy I know. The Cathy I know would egg on Heathcliff and Edgar fighting because she found Edgar pitiful and loved to see Heathcliff humiliate him. So this was weird and confusing. But it turns out the reason it's weird and confusing is because it's purely a plot device to explain why Heathcliff then goes after Isabella. Because in the book, the reason he's going after Isabella is revenge, right? On Edgar for bullying him as a kid. That doesn't make sense in this movie. So there has to be like some other motivation. So we contrive it by having Cathy break up with him because he said he would kill Edgar, which scared her. That's not Cathy. And then he comes into Isabella's window, which is true. He does sneak in through Cathy's window a lot in the book. Can I just say, he's soaking wet the whole time. I don't know how he didn't get pneumonia filming this, but he's always in like a white shirt like this, soaked the whole movie. Listen, it was unnecessary. I didn't hate it, but it did feel so like parody. Like it felt like a parody of itself. Like the Bridgerton, like soaking wet, hot man. We can't do it for 2 hours, you know? I feel like it would have been really impactful for like one scene, but he's just always soaking wet. So he comes into Isabella's window soaking wet, dripping, and he just says, do you know how this works? And she goes, and she's so innocent and scared and young. And he goes, do you want me to show you? And she nods. And then he basically, as he's like undressing her, declares his whole thing of like, I do not love you. I'm not going to be nice to you. I do not care about you. I'm doing this because of Cathy. Da 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 da. And then every time he says something horrible and like tells her the truth about how he feels or doesn't feel about her, he then goes, do you want me to stop? And she says no. So we have this elaborate construction of consent wherein Isabella is naive and innocent and so overcome by her sexual desires for Heathcliff that she explicitly accepts that he is going to treat her like shit. There's elements of this that I like. I like that she is vulnerable sexually. I like that she can be manipulated because of her sexual attraction to him. I do think we don't often see female characters that way, and I liked that that was the case. And I also think that's true to Isabella in the book. Emily Brontë has Catherine say that Isabella is tormenting herself with thoughts of Heathcliff's physical and moral beauty. So that's fine, but what I have a problem with is turning this into a consensual thing and turning it into, as Emerald Fennell likes to say, like a sadomasochistic thing where Isabella knows what she's getting into. She knows he's a terrible person. She does it anyway. There's elements of that in the book. When Heathcliff, first of all, everyone does warn her about how horrible Heathcliff is in the book, as in the movie. Second of all, when Heathcliff comes to get her to run away, he hangs her dog by the neck outside the house. And she gets upset about it, but she lets him do it. And then she goes with him. So that's the element of like, she knew he was not a good guy. However, that in the book does not justify the abuse she suffers at his hands. Certainly not to our narrator, Nelly, and not to the audience. And you still feel for her and feel that she's been tricked and she doesn't deserve to suffer and that she's brave for getting out. But in the movie, it turns into a consensual kink thing where she wants to be degraded by him. She wants to be abused by him. To me, that's not true to the character. I don't think she wanted to be degraded and abused. I think she deluded herself into thinking that he was going to treat her kindly. She deluded herself into thinking that, despite all the evidence in front of her, because she wanted it to be true so badly. I think that's the point. I think that's the lesson. Not that she's exactly where she wants to be, don't save her. I don't think that's fair. And because in the book, Isabella is a victim of domestic abuse and violence and escapes, And because that is so ahead of its time for Emily Brontë to have written, and because it's written with empathy and sensitivity and courage and admiration, it really offends me and pisses me off for Emerald to turn that into not only a consensual kink thing, but that the consensual kink thing is the punchline and a joke for the rest of the movie, where it's like funny that Isabella is degrading herself for Heathcliff. And he's not cruel to her. He told her that's what he was going to do, and she likes it. It whitewashes Heathcliff's character because, to me in the book, this relationship is the strongest, most difficult to ignore reason why Heathcliff can never be excused or apologized for because of what he does to Isabella. So we erase that in the movie. So he's really just so romantically, desperately, pathetically in love with Catherine. He could never love another woman, but he could do this distant sexual thing with her where she knows the terms and she knows he'll never love her. And he has her write letters to Catherine on his behalf because he's still illiterate, even though in the book he's gone 3 years and he comes back literate. So I don't really know why we shortened that, but okay. But do you see what I'm saying? That it's not just deviating from the text and adding in new characters or removing characters. It is perverting the spirit of the story and the spirit of the character and the message from, it's not your fault, even if you are young and naive and deluded, and even if everyone leaves you and abandons you on your own to be with this man and says that you made your choice and you made your bed, you can still get out and it's still worth it. It has turned into, you're pathetic, you like to be treated like shit, that's your thing that you're into, and it's embarrassing for you, everyone's laughing at you for it, and yet you love it. I don't think that's taking the themes of sadomasochism in the story and translating it correctly. I think Edgar is a little bit sadomasochistic in the story because he lets Catherine treat him and everybody else like garbage and keeps crawling back to her. I think Heathcliff is, I think Cathy is. Maybe the one person I think is not is Isabella. So I really had a hard time with that. And they fully like humiliate her and make it a whole joke. Heathcliff has her like on all fours with cuffs on, acting like a puppy at Wuthering Heights when Nelly comes to visit. Nelly's like horrified. And I think this is coming from a line in the text that I actually quoted in my book episode before I watched the movie. I quoted this thing where he says that she's such a puppy for him, that he had to be so cruel to her because she's like a puppy. He worked so hard to get her to hate him. And so I think Emerald took that and turned it into like, ooh, puppy kink. I don't think it's thoughtful. I don't think it's deep. I think it is, as usual for her, shallow provocation and gimmick. Heathcliff has purchased Wuthering Heights from Mr. Earnshaw, and Catherine goes to visit him after he dies, goes to visit her father after he dies, and she sees his dead body in front of like an absolutely absurd mountain of bottles he's drunk through, and she kicks him and his teeth fly out. And people were shocked by this in the audience at the movie theater, and my sister, having not read the book, was shocked by this and was like, that felt really out of character and like violent for her. I thought that was interesting because when I saw that, I went, yeah, that's the Cathy I know. The Cathy I know is violent, impulsive, cruel, and real. No filter. And she would kick her abusive dad thoughtlessly when she first sees him and then regret it after. So that was like a moment of clarity for the character, but actually for viewers of the movie on its own, that was discordant with what we had seen of Cathy otherwise, which was that she was like internalized a lot of her issues rather than externalizing them constantly. So that should have been a good moment, but it was actually just weird and discordant. But yeah, he dies. Heathcliff takes over Wuthering Heights. When Cathy came to Thrushcross Grange, Isabella had made for her a dollhouse of Thrushcross Grange and a little doll of Cathy with her actual hair on the doll. I thought that was fun and interesting because I said in my episode about the book, without having saw the movie, I said they treat her like a little doll, they dress her up, they kind of objectify her and squish her into the girly girl that they want her to be, even though that's not her at all. I thought it was interesting, the Margot Robbie Barbie of it all. I did feel in some ways like this role felt similar to Barbie, and it should not have, because Catherine Earnshaw's not Barbie, but the way that she was so repressed and internalized everything and hid everything and tried to play the part felt Barbie. And she didn't have enough like really chaotic, deranged outbursts of behavior for me personally to see it as Catherine. I don't know. But after Catherine had chastised Isabella for her crush on Heathcliff and humiliated her, she finds her doll stabbed and bloody in the dollhouse by Isabella. So I don't know. I liked the idea of the dollhouse. Did I need the stabbed and bloody doll? not really, but okay. Okay, so like I said, before Heathcliff and Isabella got married, Cathy finds out that Nelly knew that Heathcliff overheard her talking bad about him the night that Edgar proposed and didn't tell Cathy. And so she blames Nelly for losing Heathcliff and for basically ruining her life, which in the context of the movie is actually kind of true. Nelly's really malicious and jealous and scheming and conniving and meddling. She tries to kick Nelly out, but Nelly then goes to Edgar and tells him about Cathy and Heathcliff's affair. Gotcha. And then Edgar forbids Cathy from seeing Heathcliff, and things get kind of tense with he and Cathy. After Heathcliff runs off with Isabella, Catherine is so depressed, she locks herself in her room and doesn't eat, accurate to the book. While Heathcliff has Isabella write letters to Cathy from Wuthering Heights, Nelly is burning all the letters, and she has this like devious, diabolical look on her face as she's burning them. Just inhuman. Like Professor Snape in the first Harry Potter movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are you so devious type thing? But she's burning all the letters. Okay, great. Now we have all of our favorite tropes in one. Cathy tells Nelly that she's had a miscarriage. She says, the baby's gone. And she's being all creepy and ghosty. And Nelly's like, did you bleed? Because if not, then the baby's not gone. And Nelly doesn't tell Edgar. Turns out Cathy did have a miscarriage, but it doesn't bleed. Like the baby stays inside. And I guess somehow physically she felt it, spiritually she knew, I don't know. But because it was untreated, she gets sick, and that's what ends up killing her. So suddenly Nelly realizes she might actually be sick after like a week of this, and throws up the covers to try to like get her to get some fresh air. And she sees her legs are all like bloated and veiny, and realizes that she's actually really sick, calls a doctor. Edgar freaks out. Why didn't you tell me she was actually sick? Remember in the movie, there's no thing where Cathy tells Nelly, I'm going to pretend to be sick to piss Edgar off. So it really is Nelly just being like, oh, you're such a fake bitch. You're not sick. That kills Cathy. Cathy tells Nelly that she forgives her for her treason of not telling her that she overheard Heathcliff. That was really out of character, I thought, for Catherine. It's true. Nelly says she has a wondrous constancy to old attachments, and even though Nelly was mean to her, she never detached from her. But for this extent and scale of the betrayal in the movie, I don't think it would have made sense for Catherine to forgive her like that. And again, Catherine's so whitewashed. She's more like her daughter in the book, in the movie. Do you know what I mean? Like a Cathy Linton who messes up and then feels bad. Whereas Catherine Earnshaw messes up and then gets defensive and retaliates more and more. Heathcliff goes to see Cathy before she dies, but by the time he gets there, she's already dead. Interesting moment when he pulls up to the Grange, to the front of the Grange, Edgar is there, and Edgar says, Heathcliff, I'm sorry. And as Heathcliff goes to go, and he goes, you don't want to go in there, trying to protect him from the awful sight of seeing Catherine. So it's this moment of like real generosity and like softness from Edgar after his wife's death. And it's a glimpse of what we see in the book, which is that he becomes a lot more sympathetic after Catherine dies. As a widower and as a single parent, he's a lot more sympathetic for the second half of the book. And he's like really not so bad. But he was never gave an inch to Heathcliff. He was always cruel to Heathcliff, and this would not have happened. However, it made me feel like a tiny bit of relief to see it, honestly. It gave me like a breather to be like, oh, okay, we're not going to kill each other now. Actually, Heathcliff does say, get off me, I'll kill you, to go see Cathy. But I don't know how I feel about it in terms of the story and like the characters, but I know that like as a viewer just of the movie objectively, I kind of had a second to like breathe and be like, okay, someone's a normal human here. But Heathcliff goes up to Catherine's chamber, and she's covered in like a sheath, in like a white sheath, and he uncovers her, and she looks dead. She looks very pale and like green, and he lays down next to her, and it mirrors the image of when they were kids and he had been like whipped by the dad, and he lays down on his stomach with his open wounds on his back, and Catherine's on her back next to him. They're in that like same position, except she's dead now, and he recites all the lines that he says in the book at her death, or some of the lines that are like, how can I live without my life? How can I live without my soul? Haunt me, take any form, drive me mad, but don't leave me here. He says all of that. And I don't know if this is on Jacob Elordi, but the way that he delivered them, he was like mumble whispering. We couldn't even hear him. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in movies, especially if there's not built-in closed captioning. If I can't hear what you're saying, I'm freaking pissed in the movie theater. And those are some of the most beautiful lines. And he doesn't enunciate them. He doesn't scream them. He like rushes them out crying and whispering and hugging her. I was pretty disappointed by that, by those line deliveries, but I think it's because we needed to have him like laying down and then do the flashback to when they were children, all this flashback montages of them as children, da 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 da. People were crying. People were moved to tears by that moment in the film. I was fed up by then, I think, and I was not moved to tears. I was kind of relieved that we were almost done and could get out of there. So that's the movie. That's Wuthering Heights. I don't think I did such a good job of plot summary on this one just because I'm frazzled by my emotions about it and by my frustration, not only with Emerald Fennell, not only with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, but with the press tour and the internet. I think that Margot Robbie is an excellent producer, an excellent marketer. She is always on, always poised, always perfect, doing everything, and I admire her for that, and I respect her hustle. That woman has hustle. And I think she's talented. But I think when you're the star and the face of the movie and the producer, and you're like the queen of press tours, it feels a little bit like maybe nobody ever said no to anything. Like, I wonder how much Emerald and Margot were in the stew together, and there wasn't a ton of room for like dissent or editing. I don't know what happened, but I find myself feeling Margot more and more become a commercial product and less an artist. Not that those two things can't coexist. I don't know, like the way that this press tour felt so disingenuous, the like affair baiting and like saying all these things about how you're codependent with Jacob and he put 1,000 roses in your trailer and stuff like that. It felt so disingenuous that it's like insulting, and then it doesn't feel like we can trust you anymore, especially when the marketing for this film did not feel like an accurate reflection of the experience of watching the film. Like, some people were shocked by how dark it was because they had no idea, because it was marketed like the greatest love story of all time with Charlie XCX on the track. I think some people showed up for Bridgerton and obviously got some bastardized droplet of Wuthering Heights, and they were really taken aback by it. So what good is like this viral press tour and marketing if it's not an accurate sell of what your movie is? I think that actually harms your movie more than it helps it. So I think that's an issue. And now, like, whatever Margot's next project is, I think people are going to be very critical of her every step she makes now. She's watched on her press tour, she's watched on the red carpet, she's watched on interviews, she's watched on late night, on social media. Everything she says and does is scrutinized because she's Margot Robbie. And that creates inevitably like a veneer and a falseness because you have to be on and you have to be presenting. And ultimately it disconnects the artist from the viewer. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I think this happens across industries and talents. But it did feel, I felt a little bit like I was watching Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Jacob Elordi, I do think he's a good actor. I don't think he was very good in this. Like I said, I was really disappointed with his like line delivery on beseeching Catherine to haunt him for the rest of his life when she's dead. I think he was much better in Frankenstein, the other gothic novel adaptation he did over the past year. I think he was better as Frankenstein's monster than as Heathcliff. I think he's very clearly checked out now, and Margot and Jacob are both on the defensive on the press tour now, constantly defending the vision, defending the casting, PR. This is everything wrong with movies. This is everything wrong with movies today. Relying on IP, relying on a name that people know in order to get funding, to have this massive budget that you spend on visuals and not on writers or other creatives to help you with your story, and then a massive marketing press tour, and then buzz on social media, like I'm contributing to by making this video. I almost didn't want to feed into this, but I feel a responsibility at the same time to say my piece on it and like be a voice of reason, which I think I am. It's just so shallow. It's so hollow. We want art. We want more Sorry Baby in the world. We want more independent filmmakers with something that they desperately need to say, that they have on their heart and on their mind, that they need to say, and the only way they can say it is through film. That's good film. Coming up with something to do with your budget and time is not good film. Emerald Fennell is sitting around coming up with something to do with her budget and time, and what would result in the aftermath of making it. The awards, the press tour, the social media, the money. That's not artistry. That's not passion for creating. And it's not just on her side that the problem is. It's not just with the filmmakers who do stuff like this. It's not just with like Ari Aster. It's with the viewers who accept mediocrity unquestioningly, not only accept it, but chastise anyone who dares to criticize it or think deeper about it. The pandemic of it's not that deep, the pandemic of you seem fun is the literacy crisis, okay? If our value as a society, if the values we hold ourselves to are to be fun and positive about everything, we lose literacy. Literacy and critical thinking are not fun and positive and women. Literacy is, what is this media saying? What is it trying to tell me? What do I interpret it as? Who made this? Why? What could have been better? What makes it special? Why does it make me feel this way? That's what reading is. That's what watching a movie is. That's what consuming media is. But when you're just scrolling all day long, always on that damn phone, and you refuse to strain your neurons to think because it's too hard, you feel intimidated and stressed out by other people doing that, and so you chastise them for it and tell them to stop thinking. That's not just a literary crisis, that's fascism, guys. That's fascism, not to be dramatic, but being discouraged to think for yourself, being discouraged to have opinions because you're a downer, especially as a woman, being told that you're annoying, you're no fun, you're a downer, that is not only hurtful to the individual, that's hurtful to the collective. We need people to think, we need people to disagree, we need people to argue with respect, with dignity, with thought, and we need art to mean something. Emerald Fennell strikes me as the son of a CEO billionaire in Manhattan who decides he wants to be a painter, takes one art class, starts an Instagram, and posts their mediocre pop art impressionistic crap because they can't pay anything. And then says, it's an interpretation. That's what Emerald Fennell is to me. Emerald Fennell, sorry. I'd like to see her pronounce my last name. That's what I think Emerald Fennell is to film. And just because she's a woman doesn't mean that supporting her is an act of feminism. Women can be anti-feminist. Rich, powerful women, white women can be racist and classist. You need to think deeper than a girl made it and it's for girls and I'm a girl so I like it. You can indulge in that a little bit. I indulge in that. I said I had so much fun going to the theater. It was all girls. That's so fun. I love girls. I love seeing men be sexualized on screen instead of women for once. But then we have to think deeper and we have to have like 2 or 3 more thoughts after that. From now on, let's start a counter it's not that deep movement. It is that deep. It is fun to think about things and debate things. I don't know. If you're not having these kinds of conversations with people in your real life where you're debating and analyzing movies or books, maybe you just don't have people who are interested in the same things as you. Maybe people take it as bad manners. I don't know. I've always been surrounded by people who want to have these conversations or who at the very least let me yap and then say, oh, good job. That was an interesting thought. And we need to be doing that. So if you don't have anyone in your life that's doing that with you, try to find those people, have those conversations, because if you don't think, if you don't critically think, if you don't analyze anything, if you only read books at a 3rd grade reading level, not just when you're at the beach, not just when you're on a plane, but all the time, that's all you consume, you are robbing yourself of so many thoughts and experiences. You're only hurting yourself. You're only deteriorating your own brain function. Hold yourself to a higher standard. Hold other people around you to a higher standard. Hold art to a higher standard. That includes books, movies, TV shows, music, comedy, all types of entertainment. Hold it to a higher standard. Seek out stuff that really resonates with you and don't focus on the stuff that doesn't. Analyze it, think about it, talk about it with people. What is the point of existing? What is the point of like literally being alive if not to talk about art with people? I don't understand this idea of it's not that deep. Everyone's a critic. Stop crying about it. I'm just having a conversation. If you don't like it, think about why you don't like it. Not me specifically. I'm sure there's plenty of reasons why plenty of people don't like me. I'm talking about if you don't like when people criticize things, think about why you don't like it. Why are you taking it personally? Not everything is, oh, people are rage baiting, people are dogpiling, people are hating. This is not rage bait. This is not dogpiling. I happen to share an opinion with a lot of people, and if a lot of people think the same thing, maybe there's something to that. How about that? I'm sorry for my tone if I am like ranting and screaming, because I'm probably preaching to the choir, and you're probably listening to this going, girl, not me, don't yell at me, I agree with you. But in that case, then just consider a collective rant. We're ranting together. And if you care about high quality art, if you care about critical thinking and analysis, follow my podcast, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on YouTube. Hello? Subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube. Follow me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a rating and review. You can follow me on Patreon. It's not like a paid subscription. It's just a free Patreon where you can listen to the podcast. Go to my website, moviesforbreakfast.com, to find me everywhere. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And finally, as always, if you loved this movie, I'm not calling you stupid. You're allowed to like whatever you want, and I'm not yucking your yum. And when I yell at Emerald Fennell, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at you if you're the people who are saying we shouldn't think deeper about it. I'm not yelling at you if you're saying that was camp and fun and I had a good time and it was beautiful to look at. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.